Hello guys, this is going to be part of a new series as per request of a viewer to show the individual steps that go into my asset creation. Firstly, before we begin, I want to give some insight into some of the processes I'll be using. Firstly, when it comes to texturing, I'll be using Polygon for my textures. What they are is essentially an online service that provides a library of amazing PBR materials. I'm not endorsed by them, so any thoughts on them will be my own. Secondly, I will attempt to cut my videos as little as possible. This means that I can show you any mistakes I make, and instead of glossing over them, I'll show you how I overcome them. Lastly, I'll be doing each model in one sitting where possible. So let's get started. What we're going to make today is a cup, and what you will see right now is Vanilla Blender minus the addition of screencast keys, which I'm just going to quickly enable. And what we're going to do to begin is we're going to create a new scene. Make sure it's all set back to normal, start screencast again. So what you're going to see is essentially a camera, a cube, and a lamp. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of them. We do not need those right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to press A to firstly deselect the lamp that I was selecting, and then press A again to select everything. Then we're going to press delete. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom left, the add. The shortcut for this is Shift A, and it will let you add a mesh. I kind of don't really use this menu a whole lot because I don't really like how it floats. So I'm going to go down here, I'm going to go to mesh and go to cylinder. In the bottom left you will see that it's added a cylinder and we have some parameters that we can change. The radius will change the radius of the cylinder. So we're going to set back to 0. The depth will change the depth of it. We're going to leave the other things as they are. We don't need any of this. What we are going to change though is the vertices. As you will see, it's set to 32. If I change this to 16, then they are essentially halved. If I halve that again, back down to 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it at 16. Now we are going to press tab to go from object mode. You can see that we're in object mode right now on the bottom left. We're going to go to edit mode. You can do this by pressing tab. It will cycle through your last two modes. So basically if we're in vertex paint mode and we go and press tab, it will change from edit mode to vertex and vice versa. So what we're going to do is go to edit mode. We are going to then press G, which will let you grab. We're going to press Z to lock that to the Z axis, and we're going to press 1. This lets us floor the object, so it's now on this plane. I kind of like to work with fairly big objects, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this central point, this origin, as a pivot. The way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to set the pivot right now, which is in the center of the mass, to here with the 3D cursor. You can see that the 3D cursor in here is set to 0, 0, 0, which is in exactly the same place as our origin by pressing the period key. You can also see this down here, where you can change the pivot point. You can go to active element, medium point, individual origins, 3D cursor, and bounding box center. What we want is the 3D cursor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press S for scale, and we're going to type in 2. You can see in the bottom left, which I cannot get to, that it will show up at the bottom what you've typed in. So if I press 3, that will change there, but we need 2 right now. I also think this is a little bit wide for a cup, so we are going to press S again, and instead of pressing Y and changing on the Y, or X, change it on the X, what we're going to do is we're going to change it on both at the same time. We will do this by pressing Shift and Z, which means it excludes an axis. You can see that right there. We can do this with Shift and X as well, but we need Shift and Z for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to 0.75, as I think that looks fairly good. Now we are going to change down here where we select vertex points. So you can see right now we're selecting vertex points. We're going to change that to faces. We are still, however, using the pivot point at the bottom. So if I press E to extrude and then right click, which means that we extrude it but essentially do not move it, it stays in the same place, and then press S to scale, it's going to go down. We do not want that. We do not want that pivoting around that point. We want it to be central to that mass. So we're going to change this back to the median point. You'll see now that this is moved out to the plane. If I click here, it will change the pivot point to there, and the same with everywhere else. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click this face and we're going to press S to move it in. I'm going to go with 0.9, that sounds nice to me. Yeah, looks good. And right now you'll see in the top left that we are on the user selected orientation for the viewport, and we're on the perspective mode. We change this with our number pad, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to press 1, which changes us to front view. We don't want to be in perspective right now, so we want to press 5 to change to orthographic, and then Z to go to the wireframe view. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press E to extrude, and we're going to bring this down. I want to bring it down to about there. So this is looking more like a cup already. I kind of want another bit on the bottom to go in, so we're going to do the same again. We're going to press E and then S to change the scale, and then type in 0.9 to do essentially 90% of the scale. We're going to press E again and bring it up just a little bit. If I go back to my front orthographic and press Z again, so if I press 1, make sure we're in orthographic, and then press Z, you'll see that these are a little bit far apart. I want to bring them a little bit closer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here, and you'll see that I've selected that plane inside of there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press G for grab, press Z again to lock it to the Z axis and bring it down just a little bit more. Now, you will see that we do not have a handle. I kind of want a handle. And the issue that I think we're going to face at the moment during creating it, because this will make it a little bit easier, I think, is we kind of want a perpendicular plane, a plane to be perpendicular to this y-axis and one up here to be perpendicular to this x-axis, parallel even, not perpendicular. So the way that we're going to achieve that is by pressing R to rotate. We're going to press R to rotate and press Z to lock it to the Z axis again. And we're going to type in, because there are 16 sides, 11.25. And that will rotate it perfectly so that this plane here is perpendicular to this y-axis, parallel to that y-axis. The reason that this happens with the 11.25 is that 11.25 times by 2 is 22.5, and that is 1/16 of 360 degrees. You will see that if I type in, for example, 22.5, it will turn it 1/16. We only want to turn it 1/1/8 second. So we type in 11.25, and that's not perpendicular. Now, for this next step, we are going to press Tab. We're going to add a new object, and we're going to add a circle. You'll see that a circle's been added below if I go back into the wireframe mode. What we want to do is we want to move this up by 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to press G, Z, and then type in 2. Then we're going to go back to edit mode. So we're going to press Tab, so that you can see that we're in edit mode now. We're going to press R to rotate. We're going to change it to rotate on the X-axis by pressing X. And then we're going to type in 90 to turn 90 degrees. Now all we're going to do is we are going to go back to here quickly. So we're going to go back into our other object by going back into object mode by pressing Tab, right-clicking on this other object, pressing Tab again to go into edit mode, and then I'm going to press Z and select this far right face, this one that is exactly parallel to the y-axis. Now you'll see in the top right you have some transform tools. I'm going to go to this transform. I'm going to click global, just in case these are different. I want to find the global value, not the local necessarily. Even though they may be the same, you still want to choose global for this particular thing. And we're going to take that X value. So we're going to click on that. We're going to do Control and C. Now we're going to press Tab again to go back into object mode, press Z and select that circle inside. Now we're going to select this, and whilst in object mode, we're going to click on that X value and do Control and V. So you'll see this brought it right up to this edge here. Now we're going to press Tab and we're going to go back into the edit mode. We're going to select Vertex Select, and we are going to firstly press S and Z. No, we're not. We're going to press S and not Z. And we're going to scale this up a little bit. So we're going to scale it to maybe 1.5. Maybe a little bit less actually. S and 1.2. And we're going to select this vertex over here, the furthest right one. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom where the proportional editing menu is. So you'll see it's right next to this vertex, edge and face select. We're going to click there and we're going to click on enabled. What this is going to do is it's going to give you this area of influence, which you can change with your scroll wheel. And it will sort of drag some of the connected vertexes and edges around with it. So it's sort of a smoother line essentially. We're going to click Ctrl Z to undo that. What we're going to do with this though is press G and X. I'm going to scale that down ever so slightly and bring in this handle just a little bit. So that's more of a handled shape. Now we're going to go back to our front view, press Z, and then B for box select. So there's generally two ways to select things in this. You either use box select by pressing B and dragging, or you press C, and you get this nice circle, which you click and drag, and it will select those vertices as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to select all of them except from these ones that are interacting with the side. We're going to select all of them up to there. We're going to press the delete key and click on vertices. So you'll see now we have this nice handle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the snap feature, which is just the right of the proportional editing. We're actually going to disable the proportional editing. And we're going to click on this little magnet here. The shortcut for that is Shift Tab. I generally tend to use that quite a lot because sometimes I want to snap something and sometimes I really don't. We're going to change what it snaps to though. As default, it's set to increment. What we want is vertex. So we're going to change that to vertex, make sure it's enabled, press G and Y, and then hover over this vertex up here. So you'll see now it's in line with this this edge here on the other object. They're not connected, but they are in line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press E to extrude. We're going to press Y again, and then hover over the other one. So now you have this beautiful handle. We're also going to do one more thing. We're going to select each of these lines here, each of these edges here. We're going to press E one more time, X, and do it to the inside ones. So now you'll see that there's a face in there. This basically means when we come to subdivide it, that they are still connected, they're still overlapping with each other, which is what we want. The reason that we haven't made them connected objects, I will show you that now, just very quickly. We're not going to worry too much about this. Let's just select all of these. Come back to this in a second. Is if we subdivide this and we, do something like this, you're going to get this handle and it's going to extrude, and whilst it's subdividing, it's going to bring this out. The way that you'll essentially fix that, there are a couple of ways, but they will all yield the same result every single time, is if we select this square and we fix that, you get this pinching, which we kind of don't really want. You don't really want pinching because it'll pull your UVs and make things not look so good. So we're just going to undo all of that. And we will come back to that in just a moment. What we're going to do first though is we're going to go back into our handle. We're going to press A to select it. We're going to go over to our tabs over here, find this little wrench, which is our modifiers, add modifier, and add solidify. You might not notice immediately what it's doing, but if I change this, we're actually going to go into the negative because we're bringing it out. We're going to change this to -0.2. And I think that gives us a pretty nice looking handle. We're going to also click apply. So now basically these modifiers are used for non-destructive workflows. So you'll see if I go back into edit mode that we can still only interact with these faces. We actually want all of these faces, so what we're going to do is we're going to apply it. When we do that, now we have access to all of them. Our next step, we are going to go back into our other object, our actual cup. We're going to press tab, and we are going to set this up for subdivision. Now if you see what happens with the subdivision now, it just kind of messes with it a little bit, which you don't really want. Also, it's kind of pulled these faces down quite a lot, which we especially don't want. There are a few ways around this. I'm going to demonstrate a couple. So the first one we have is mean crease. So if you press N, it will bring up this tab, and we have this edge data. Don't worry about this mean bevel weight. This one underneath, however, mean crease will bring it up. This generally works pretty well. Doesn't look so bad to me, but it doesn't work in every single situation, as you'll see with the other version, the other method even. I think we can achieve something that looks a little bit more smooth and nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to press tab again to go back into object mode, and we're going to put that back to 0. The next method is to use a loop, and we're going to use a loop both on the inside and the outside. We're going to make sure that one on the inside, so we're going to disable this quickly by clicking this little eye in the modifiers tab. We're going to make sure that both of them are selected. We're going to press 1, and we are going to press Z to go into our wireframe. We actually want these to be on exactly the same level of Z, if that's the correct term. Probably is not. We're going to want them to both be exactly the same Z height, so what we're going to do is we're going to press S and Z to scale them down. You can see now that I'm dragging the scale of these, pushing them further apart or closer together, and we're going to type in 0 to bring them together. And we are going to quickly enable our subdivision again. We're going to press Shift Tab because I'm actually still in the snap mode. We don't really want that. So it's now disabled. We're going to press G and Z and drag this up. You'll see that that's now a little bit smoother than it was before. We didn't really want that sort of harsh and hard edges that it was giving us. This is a great way to do things by using these loop cuts. However, they do add faces, and sometimes they can make your model quite messy, especially when you come to unwrap it. So I wouldn't always recommend them. However, for this situation, we are going to use them. But right now we're going to use the mean crease. We're going to turn off this subdivision again. And the reason we're going to use the mean crease is because of these faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and right click on this edge at the bottom. So we've now selected this face. We're going to go to the other one inside, press Shift and Alt together, and right click. And we are going to then up this mean crease to the max. We're going to turn this all the way up to 1, you'll see why when we enable again. Boom, we have a nice harsh edge. We kind of really want that for this bottom bit. And the last step that we're going to do before this sort of subdivision is done is to make another loop cut by pressing Ctrl and R and bringing that one down. I'm also going to make sure that these are the same height, the one inside and the one outside, as you'll see in just a second. I'm going to do S, Z, and 0 again to bring these to the same height. So you can see now they are the same. Oh, actually, we will come back to that in a minute. We're not going to render right now. So lastly, we're going to, lastly in terms of modeling anyway, we're going to select our other object. So go back into object mode. We're going to press Tab to take this into edit mode. And we are going to apply a subdivision to this. You could leave it like that. That to me though looks pretty horrible, so we're going to change that. We're going to press Alt and Shift together to do loop select, and we're going to select all of these edges. And we are going to use the mean crease here because it will work. That looks a little bit better, upping it to 56. That looks fine to me. However, there is one problem, which you probably cannot see right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab back in object mode our cup, and we're going to press H to hide it. Alt H will unhide it. So if your things disappear, that's how you unhide them. That works in object mode and edit mode, and they are both separate. So the issue that I was going on about is this one. Over here, there is this rounded cap, essentially. I kind of don't really want that. We could fix this by selecting all of these again and putting mean crease on. That kind of fixes it. It flares it out a little bit, not so bad in this example, but we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to disable that. You could also do the same thing that we did before, create a loop cut and bring this right up to the edge. I really do not like this. I don't like edges to be overlapping with each other in this way, and having faces with 0 area. So we're definitely not going to do that. What we are going to do in this situation, however, as it's a good fix, is we're going to select both these faces. We're going to press delete and click on only face. And you will see that it brings it right up to this edge, which is nice. It means it's overlapping, which is good for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to press Tab again and Alt-H to bring back the other object. We're going to quickly just set up our subdivisions. So what we want is both of these set to 3 in both. The render one is the important one. Make sure that's set to 3. You want that to be your high one. If your computer or laptop cannot handle it, then you can turn down these other ones. That's fine. These are just whilst we view it. I'm going to leave mine at 3 because my computer isn't so bad. And we're actually going to go into Add Modifier, and we're going to stack another subdivision below this one. We're going to leave the render on 2, but the view on 0. This means that when it comes to render it, it will do the same thing here that we are doing. So it's the same as doing that essentially. However, I don't like to have high numbers in the subdivision, as it will kind of slow things down quite a lot. We're going to do this to the cup as well and give it another subdivision. Next, we're going to unwrap this model. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to disable both of these subdivisions that we've just done. They will still be there, don't worry. If we render it, then they will apply themselves again because we have this little camera selected, which means that they are set to render. And we are going to click on this cup first and press Tab to go into object mode. And we're going to select the edges that we want to. Actually, first, you will see that there is this pink line. This will get in the way of our seam, so if I select that with Alt and right click and click Mark Seam, you'll see it doesn't change. We do want that to change. We do not want that to stay the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to press N, scroll down to our mesh displays and turn off creases. So now it's just gone back to normal face, normal edge, which means that if we select that edge again and click Mark Seam, now it'll be red. We can also disable seams, but we want seams on. We also do not want that one to be seamed. So we're going to, in this situation, you will learn the way that you want to do things in your own time. I'm going to select the faces, the edges that I want to mark, and I'm just going to click Mark Seam. So this will give us 3 islands. It will give us this island at the bottom. It will give us this one around the outside, and it will give us, 4 in fact, this one inside, this cylinder inside, and that circle at the bottom. That is good for me, and that's good for the example. You can tidy things up a little bit more, but that seems like an optimal way to do it to me. Next, we are going to do another loop cut with Control R, and we're going to do one right here. In fact, no, we're not. We're not going to do that. We're going to select this one here with Alt, and we're going to click Mark Seam as well. You'll see that this will allow it to unwrap like a piece of paper folded around in a circle, essentially. And we are going to select that one actually, and we're just going to clear that one right there because we want this to be a perfect circle. Then we're going to press A. We're going to go into the top right of our viewport, and you'll see this small triangle. We're going to click that, drag it out. You'll see that we have 2 views now. In the bottom left of this view, we're going to click on this little square, change it from 3D view to UV image editor. We're going to go down to the bottom and click new. I'm going to name this blank, as we're only using it as a test, and we're just going to change it to a bit more of a white color. You'll see right now with its default reset unwrap that it's just kind of squares and circles. We are going to change that right now. So by selecting all of this and clicking unwrap, unwrap again, You'll see that we have this nice UV layout. In the bottom right, right now, if you press if you scroll the scroll wheel, by the way, it will move these bars along if they're not long enough. You will see that there's the same sort of selection mode that we had for the 3D view, so vertex, edge, and face. We have the same here, except from we now have an island as well. So we're going to click the island. We're going to select this one here, and I just kind of want to turn this 90 degrees, so we're going to do R and 90. And that will turn that one like that, just so that these two are fairly uniform with each other. That works fine for now. We're going to go back to the handle. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to press N and turn off the creases, turn on the seams. And we're just going to select that edge by holding Shift and Alt and the edge on the other side and clicking Mark Seams. Now we're going to press A twice to select it all and unwrap. That also looks fine to me. So now if we re-enable our subdivisions by clicking the little eye under the modifier. Ooh, we still do not have lights. Oh, actually at the top where it says Blender Render, change that to cycles. We are going to now set up a plane underneath. So we're going to go to Add Object, Mesh and Plane. We're going to do S, and we're just going to type in 32 to give us a nice big plane. We can do the same thing. We don't need to mark any seams here as this is a flat object and it's a square, perfect shape to unwrap. We're just going to click Unwrap and Unwrap. Then we're going to go to Add. We're going to add a lamp and we're going to add a sun. And we're just going to kind of find a nice angle, so like this. I think that the light coming across this way sounds like a great idea. Like that, essentially. Oh, what am I doing? Grease pencil needs a palette, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm using the wrong one. So we're going to do R, and we're just going to rotate it. It will just rotate basically like a flat object going around in a circle. We'll rotate it that way. It doesn't need to be lined up. It doesn't need to penetrate this object with this line because it's a global form of illumination. So if you press Shift and Z to switch to render mode, you will see there is your cup. We're also going to very quickly just add a camera. We're just going to add a camera like this. Again, the camera will create itself at this origin, but it will point itself in the direction that you're facing when you created it. We're going to press G to drag it around. We're going to press period to rotate around this 3D cursor. And we're going to press S to bring it in a little bit. We're also going to press R and X just to rotate it up slightly. I'm just going to make sure that I include this plane entirely because I kind of don't really want to mess around with things with the sky. Other than going to this world tab up here, clicking use nodes. By this color, I'm going to click here to this little circle, this little dot, and just clicking sky texture. And you'll see that that just adds a moderately nice sky for us, which is perfect for what we want it for. I'm going to press Z again to go back into the wireframe view. And everything has rotated itself. Even I have rotated. Okay, that was fixed by just pressing 1 to go back into the front view and then rotate it around. So now we have this moderately nice cup, and we're going to chuck some textures on it. This is where the polygon sort of area of the thing comes in. We're just going to use these textures. There's plenty of tutorials to show you how to load up these textures, but these are just the ones that I'm using. When you load them in, they just show up like normal textures. So quartz. I'm using like polished marble for the cup and a wood flooring for the bottom. You'll see that these probably aren't quite, no they're not. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag out this tab again, we're going to zoom in a little bit, Over here, we're going to go into the UV image editor. We're going to press tab. So we're going to make sure that we're selected on the right thing, so that we're selected on the wood flooring right now. We are going to stay on the wood flooring and render at the same time. We're going to press S to scale this up, and you'll see that when this renders, that it's changing the size and scale of that wood flooring. And I think that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing with the cup very quickly. We're going to go with 2.5. So if you press S and type in 2.5, it will scale that by 2.5 exactly. I think that's very similar scale to the handle. Quickly see in just a second. Yeah, that looks good to me. The last couple of things that we're going to do is we're going to go into the Render Layers tab, which is just by the Render tab on this hotbar. We're going to click on Denoising. We're going to go to Passes and click on the little arrow, and we're going to turn on Ambient Occlusion. We're going to go back to our render, change this from CPU to GPU. If you do not have GPU selected there, go into File, User Preferences, System, select CUDA, and then select your display device, and then click Save User Settings, and that will render with your GPU. That, I think, is everything for this tutorial. So what we're going to do is, this is everything minus compositing, which will happen after you've rendered, so I'm going to render this. Okay, so now it's finished rendering. We're going to quickly composite it. What we're going to do is we're going to open up this node editor in this other window. So the way that I got that window was I dragged this triangle out. The way that you close it is by dragging that triangle back over it, but we want it right now, so don't get rid of it. Going to drag it out to about there. We're going to change this one to the node editor, and right now you'll see that it's selected on this material. This is the polygon material, don't worry about that. What we need to do is go down to this bottom bit, and where it says shader, we're going to click on the one next to it, which is compositing. We're going to click on use nodes as well. So now you see that we have these nice two nodes. We're going straight from the render layers to the composite. We want a step in between that. What we're going to do is we're going to, not close that. We're going to drag this one over just by left clicking and dragging. We're going to click on add at the bottom. Go to color, and we're going to add firstly our RGB curves. We're going to drag this AO pin, which we enabled in the render layers over here in the passes. We're going to drag that to there, to the image. Then we're going to go to add again. We're going to add another color. We're going to add another thing from color. We're going to add the mix node this time. Going to drag that one over as well. We're going to go from this pin here to there. Right now you see this is white. We do not want that to be white. So we're going to change this from mix to multiply. So now basically it will take any dark areas from this ambient occlusion and apply it to the first image, which is in the first pin. And we are going to grab this line here in the middle, and we're just going to drag it down. I'm going to sort of move it around so you can move it up, or you can move it down. I'm changing this multiply to other things, so if I change it to screen, for example, and I drag it up into the top left, it will add more white. If I go into the bottom right, it'll add more dark. That obviously looks kind of odd, so we're going to change that back to multiply, and we're going to leave it, I would say, about there, with just a slight amount of ambient occlusion. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. I will be releasing another video as soon as I possibly can on something else. I will make sure that I cover as much as I can in each video, and if you have any questions, then feel free to leave them down in the comments. I will obviously respond as quickly as I can. Other than that, please like and have fun using Blender. Bye.